All right. So, on AF Stalin's Death Squad, as I usually like to call it, usually it's in another room that I also have set up, but we'll use this political server instead. Um, this is Zoltan. I used to know him from a long time ago. Well, now it's Zoltanous HN. You
I
changed your.
changed it to my YouTube username.
Okay. Yeah, I've known you a while. We go way back. We've go.
Yeah, I didn't like when I got a message from dude from Twitter saying to come on here. I didn't really expect to meet you. You just told me a podcast. All right.
So, what do you describe as postmodern about your philosophy?
Well, okay, so postmodernism, like a philosophy, is really just post-structuralism, like the actual terminology, and also questioning like meta narratives. Uh, this is usually relating to like truth claims or anything that revolves around power structure, and it usually has a critique. So the way you would interpret this within like fascist ideology is because postmodernism takes a hint at relativism, where everything's individualistically interpreted differently. Uh, that means it's circular because you can deconstruct everything if it doesn't convey to your own worldview. So what this means is that if you define freedom, freedom can only be actualized within a state. This is an example. Then this comes out of like consciousness. You can have like collective consciousness where you can perceive people as groups, which is related to like Giovanni Gentile's Hegelian philosophy with actualism.
So the one who wrote Theory is a Mind of It, is a pure act.
Yeah, like Giovanni Gentile's like mind as act. A lot of it deals with constructing the world through mental interpretation, and you perceive groups or values depending on how you feel about them or how you perceive them, which is basically what postmodernism is also doing. Now, the way you use this within a political system is that if you're trying to critique liberalism, they use morality, for example, humanism as an intrinsic, like
Yeah.
moral truth claim on you as a meta narrative, and what you do is you deconstruct it because it has no ontological basis. The only way they can have an ontological basis is if it's religious, and even then, I wouldn't subscribe to it. I'm not a religious person.
I'm religious myself. I went through a couple phases myself where I was questioning the reason why I questioned the National Bolshevik thing mainly had to do with the fact of how anti-American it was. And being from America, I felt like this isn't for me, So I drifted back to the right, and I don't know if you've noticed me in certain places where I'm around, like a couple third position servers. I definitely have a lot in common with the Action Francais, a lot of French fascism. Grist, what's a
Yeah, more
what?
cynical.
Yeah, more syndicalist. Yeah, I still have the entire like guilds and the syndicates and the worker unions and stuff like that. But I do have a lot of philosophers who I do admire, including an unexpected one. You never heard of a fascist who thinks Rousseau was a good person, do you?
What's his name?
Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Yes.
Never heard of that.
Do you know who that is?
uh, no, like I don't have like a big opinion on Rousseau, but like most of like what I think about him comes out of Joseph de Mastery, which was like a reactionary like counter enlightenment philosopher.
Yeah, the reason why the weird thing I take from Rousseau is the fact that I've noticed that a lot of my beliefs align with his, but in a fascist context. Like, there's a whole entire, like, blank slate versus hereditary kind of thing. Or, I think it's, yeah, blank slate versus hereditary kind of thing. And I think that genuinely people who may be ugly or maybe disingenuous looking don't necessarily have to be bad people. You look at like a lot of the people that live out in the Himalayas or live out in India, and they look, putrid as hell, and they're like monks who meditate and stuff like that, who do a lot of weird rituals, and it may look strange to other people. They are the noble savages, and but at the same time, they have lots of scripture, lots of texts, and they can provide insight into another world. And generally speaking, some of them with their the way that they behave, sometimes they walk around naked, and in the West, that's seen as like you're being immodest. But in their culture, they don't care about it because it's their culture, and they have a lot of insights to offer the world. And where another thing where I agree with them on is this entire like abdication of private property, his agrarian stances. I take a lot of weird inspiration from him. Like it's so strange that he finds his way into my philosophy. But there's other people too. Hegel, obviously there. That's it.
If I
Obvious.
was going to name like my top philosophers, it would be Foucault, Derrida, Deleuze, Hegel. I think Heidegger and Schmidt are also good. In terms of like other philosophers, like I think like Christopher Pereira is also good because he has a lot of works where argues against the like liberalism, social contract, liberal.
Rousseau is all about the social contract. Excuse me. Rousseau is all about the social contract.
Well, I personally don't think like markets or like private property or like morals are like actually intrinsically real things. They're just things that are constructed by power sources. Like somebody like in liberalism, the postmodernism would say it's wrong because it's involuntary. I would say it's right because it's involuntary and it's the state of nature.
So, how do you try to think here? What is your opinion on like you brought Foucault? Like, what do you take from him?
Well, Foucault's philosophy is all about power. The way he talks about power within his philosophy, though, is more in a liberating sense of the individual. I interpret his writings on power, how it works within power structures within states, and how it constructs things. We could take this back to Nietzsche, for example, like in Genealogy and Morals. Morals or culture, these type of things are constructed by a high, which is usually the ruling class, and it's constructed, and that's what the lower classes, the proles, like the regular people, conform to and they become a part of. You could also argue that in the Bolsheviks, when they took over, they actually did a reverse of this, where they were trying to create proletarian culture, like a new culture to replace the old culture. But it had to come from a power structure.
Hold on a second.
To enforce it versus what
Hold on a second. My roommate a little pissed off at me. I need to quiet up.
press F in chat. Wonder if you can edit that out.
Yeah. John, I have a pack for you. Sorry.
Are you getting yelled at?
Here, I'll give you another pack. My roommate's pissed off at me.
Oh, yeah.
Because I opened up a pack of cigarettes that weren't For me, it was for some fucking kid that works with him, that's in a wheelchair and stuff. And yeah, and I didn't know it was for him, and I had no idea. And John was busy being a coomer and watching porn on my computer, and yeah, I have to do that because my fucking tablet's bricked.
Why would you open more packs of cigarettes when you already have 2 packs open?
I do.
Yeah,
I'm on a live stream right now.
And you got them in the kitchen. They're 2 cherries.
Okay.
So I gotta open them packs of cigarettes.
Okay, well, live stream. Fucking staff. I hate being in this company. I really do. I really do. It's a pain in the ass. I have to deal with freaking, I didn't mean to open up his pack, and everything like that. And you can tell by my gravelly voice I smoke a lot. And it's something I wish I could quit, but I've tried so many times, and all I do is either I hallucinate.
As far as I can remember, back in 2016 when I first met you, still sounded the same.
Yeah. I'll probably try to edit that out a little bit. If I can find a video editing tool that might work.
Mm-hmm.
But if not, I have to leave it open because there's no other way of me getting through it. But anyways, we were talking about Foucault, and you talked about the individual,
Yeah, I was talking about how philosophy revolves around power. He more or less argues how it should be beneficial to the individual only. I was arguing that some of the concepts out of it, it goes back to Nietzsche of genealogy and morals. He talks about culture or morality coming from the hive, which is like a ruling class that constructs it and they project it onto society. Society conforms to it. And there's like examples of this with the political revolutions, like the Bolsheviks make the power, they create a proletarian culture and they project it on society. When Mussolini and Hitler took over their respective countries, they projected a militaristic, like nationalistic type of culture on society.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you a question. What would happen if if the proletarians projected the structure onto the elites?
I'm not really sure how it would work because most of the information and most stuff relating to the power structures within states are controlled by the elites, not the politicals. And if we're talking about in terms of political revolutions, I acknowledge that class war exists, but I don't acknowledge it in the sense that it's bourgeois versus proletariat. I see it as bourgeois versus bourgeois. Like all major political revolutions that have ever happened has been for people higher in the caste, and if they are somebody who isn't, they have to get funding or people sympathetic within the upper caste to actually help them do the revolution.
That's an interesting take because I've noticed that a lot of people who are like, and you see it even today, a lot of people like say in the Antifa, groups, they're privileged college students.
They're an extension of like liberalism. If you're talking about like actual like real communism, like the real socialists of the real movements, they were never like these retard like anarchists. They were always anti-liberal, authoritarian. It's kind of you could call them progressive in some ways, but also very conservative in some ways.
Yeah.
They were also very militaristic and fanatic, and it was also imperialistic. Like there's some good values about it that I can take away from it, but I don't agree with everything.
Yeah.
In terms of like how revolutions go, what I'm actually talking about right there is that whole Buckian thing that comes out of the reaction, where he always argued that political revolution is always upper caste versus upper caste.
Yeah. Hold on, I gotta go.
I don't think most Marxists acknowledge that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Just one of my issues with them.
So it is rough. Oh, what? Alright, well, I had to get a cigarette. I was a little bit stressed out over my roommate and everything like that, and his hem and haw about, me opening something that wasn't mine. And, I had little else to do. I couldn't, figure out what to smoke. And I had to pick up a pack somewhere, and I had to pick up the one closest to me because the one that was open was right by him, and I didn't see it under my hat. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, but the whole entire thing with Foucault is like I have a picture of him on my wall. And one of the things that I've noticed about him, because, I have autism and everything like that, I find a lot of his writings about disability and the way the mentally ill are treated. I find a lot of his philosophy useful because, I find him sort of somebody to look up to because he's somebody that spoke out against the mistreatment of people like me. I live in it.
I consider him kind of a tragic figure in a sense too. If you just look at his upbringing and how he dealt with his sexuality, and even when he fought for underprivileged people, a lot of the people that he ended up siding with, within politics and academia, in a lot of ways, are the same people that intersectional leftists were trying to cater to. Though at the same time, he was also anti-intersectional leftists. If you read his writings, the dude was an anti-communist, but his reason for being an anti-communist is that he was mad that they persecuted gays.
He also thought AIDS wasn't real. He thought AIDS wasn't real. He's like, AIDS don't exist.
Nice.
Yeah, so some of the people on my wall I love too. Why is it? There's one particular philosopher that I've found, and somebody on the internet a long time ago had his last name as a username on Facebook, and I didn't know what Ludovici meant, and I looked him up, and he's a very, what the fuck am I reading? I was like, this guy was way ahead of his time. He was a translator of Nietzsche, and he made philosophy of his own, and he was very reactionary in a time when reactionaries were few and far between. What was this guy's deal?
I've never heard of him, so...
Oh, well, he has some great books. I can't remember some of the titles. He talks about, the failure of democracy and liberalism. He talks about, he was sort of almost a, how they call it back in the day, a thought patroller. He wrote a lot of anti-feminist literature, and he got a lot of shit for it too. Because he was one of those people that say that women shouldn't speak out of turn and everything like that. And this was back in the 1920s, 1930s, when the first wave of feminism was kicking off, and he was very.
Before the thing women polar opposites.
Yeah, he would hate today's world. He would. One of the few British philosophers I look up to. Most British philosophy, though, I can't stand. You have Jeremy Bentham. You have people like.
It's all liberal, empiricist bullshit.
Pretty much. The continental philosophers of the especially the Romantic period were much better. You had Hegel, you had Kant, you had Nietzsche, you had people that really put their nose on it. Schelling and even Fichte, even that made up that whole thing, and Schopenhauer, obviously. that formulated these ideas that were now being welcomed into this new world. And I always want to start my own philosophical school of what do you call it? Of American neo-romantic philosophy, like a sort of book club of sorts, where we can discuss ideas and stuff and put. I think it'll be a lot more constructive than out and out, street protests and violence. Because I feel like,
there's something that kind of exists like that at the moment with the neo-absolutists, which is really heavily in the generative anthropology, which is like a linguistic philosophy within postmodernism. But all the people that are a part of it are mostly Americans, and they're addressing issues that relate to America. And the main point is it's creating a philosophy that is post-liberal. So it's using liberal arguments to create something beyond liberalism.
So basically, taking like an example, let me put an example, like the subject of let me try to think. Let me put a shot in the dark.
An example would be people who dunk on American imperialism like as bad. The reason why we think it's bad is because it has American moralism that comes with it in the American culture. They would argue that American imperialism is good because it's an expression of our power, it's an expression of our strength. Who cares about the morals? We rule the world.
That's pretty. That's pretty edgy right there. Actually, considering.
That's how they argue about
it. Do they have a Discord server?
Yeah, it's called the post-liberal server. I'm in it. I could probably get you an invite.
All right, cool. I wondered about one thing that I wanted to make a statement about was I have a friend online. I'm not going to reveal his real name. Let's just call him C. C is a fan of D'Annunzio, but he's also a fan of Junger, and he considers himself sort of an anarch in the sense. Do you see any sort of relevance with those people?
Well, I would say in the personality type, they're definitely the anarch because they're against the society itself, which is turning against them. Younger, a bit more argumentative because like he had elements that he agreed with within the Third Reich, but also agreements that he disagreed with. However, in post-war, when you got more into existentialism, you could probably argue that he became more of an anarch because he went against the very fabric of society. As for D'Annunzio, I'm probably mispronouncing his name really badly. I'm like a dumb American, but as far as he goes, I think there's a lot of interesting concepts with him. As far as like his nationalism went, it was a very big precursor to what Mussolini created later. And I think you could argue that in some ways is more consistent towards a nationalistic ideology than Mussolini actually was. He did compromise on the major issues that Mussolini did.
Do you think D'Annunzio would have made a better Duce?
Maybe in the sense of staying true to ideology, but I think Mussolini was the better leader because he was more pragmatic about maintaining and retaining power. You could probably argue that about any person who gets into power. Like Mao compromised on his own ideological foundation when he destroyed the Red Guard because they were too fanatic. Same with Hitler when he had to kill like Strasser, like they're bad in the long knives. It wasn't because they were deviating from ideology for the sake of deviating because they disagree with it. It was more of the reason they're deviating from ideology because I have to maintain power.
So I noticed something that a lot of people on left communism, they tend to make apologetics for Third Reich leaders. Why do they do that?
Like, could you like rephrase the question?
Okay, like people. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of pop-ups here. You're not getting on here. There we go. All right. Like Comet and Bordiga, who are part of the Italian left communist elements would make apologetics for Holocaust denialism, and said that basically that Hitler brought more social and Mussolini brought more socialism to their countries than say somebody like Stalin did.
Well, for Stalin in China, just broad examples, even North Korea, is that even though they had like worker councils and communes, they didn't have any say like in the economic structure. It was actually state bureaucrats that were appointed in charge of the industries, and they would run the industries for profit, commodity production under state oversight, and these people were a part of the government. So the state was basically functioning as a type of corporation, which is why you could call it state capitalism. Corporatism under fascism is also a variation of state capitalism, but what makes it different is that instead of the state having complete oversight and having people run these businesses like they own it within the state, it's corporate groups. These corporate groups aren't businesses; they're guilds or syndicates or like giant unions. And they have representatives that are appointed within positions, and they negotiate and they talk with each other.
Yeah.
And that's how social policy and economic regulation, prices, things like that are set in these social disputes. And because of that, you can argue there's more social reform because there's more social justice in the sense that you're allowing for bargaining to actually do these things within the society. In the Soviet system, you didn't really have that. You just had some state bureaucrat that would go, "Hey, we're doing this," and because the government told us, and that's how we're doing it. Mussolini and Hitler didn't really start doing that until they got into a wartime economy. But we could always look at, say, Salazar, like during the peace era, like he basically kept up the social reforms that were similar to what Mussolini did, and it was a long time sustaining.
So, I recently did a video on guild socialism and syndicalism, and I point out the differences that most guilds were mostly sort of a cross between businesses and unions, and were mostly self-employed workers who created their own crafts. And
they function like cooperatives.
Yeah. Whereas syndicates were basically existed in spite of businesses, but they were there to ensure worker democracy.
Yeah, like as far as like things go within companies, like I'm more lenient towards like Italian like corporate systems, which is like it's an outgrowth of syndicalism, but it's not syndicalism because you still have like business like hierarchy, but because people are grouped up within these negotiation boards, there's more collective bargaining to what they can actually do. And I do believe in things like profit sharing, setting prices, setting wages. I think you should incorporate social credit systems into the government too.
I wrote a book. I wrote a book actually that says that social credit systems should be applied in a society where not only that, but there's also an element of like, this is gonna sound really crazy, but the book advocated both for the Chinese type and the Douglas type.
As far as I know, social credit in origin goes back to the Catholic system. It was as a means of exchange, but it was also a way to enforce social ostracism, which is what the Chinese system does. Like I personally believe in a fusion between the two. I think we should switch to like an economic version of social credit, and also like a social version. Social version being like you basically monitor what people have done for the society, like what things they're doing, and you can use that to punish them if they're doing like breaking the law or doing something wrong, to where they can't have any social services. So you're basically going to make all the antisocial people that are problematic in society basically destroy themselves.
That sounds pretty effective. One thing as far as philosophy is concerned, What is your opinion on accelerationism?
Accelerationism, like, I agree with it, but it's also childish. Like, I agree with it in the sense that I think that we have to do anything to speed up its collapse. But as far as the people who latch onto it, a lot of the people don't have their own opinions. A lot of it just comes out of an echo chamber, and a lot of them are projecting people that they latch onto, like, as authority figures. Like, an example is like Ghoulie333 from YouTube. He's very big into accelerationism.
Yeah, Ghoulie. Oh yeah, Ghoulie has a problem with me. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, but aside the point, his followers, there's only a couple of them that actually have their own opinions and have their own ideas. The majority of them get their ideas from him, and they project on it and use it as a friendship social circle, so they're not even real about, like, accelerationism. And he's even acknowledged that it's an issue with an accelerationism is that it's so radical and it's so extreme that you're attracting, like, very low quality people at the same time.
You know, there's many types of it though, right?
Well, yeah, there is different types, but those neo-absolutist guys I was talking about earlier, they're not accelerationists, but they're more or less people who try to go into the system and convince it to go to its logical conclusion, which is like a technocratic authoritarian dictatorship.
Yeah, and that might come into opposition to my agrarian, agriculturalist views.
Well, I like people who are into agrarianism. I like the concepts, the aesthetics of it. I agree with many of its arguments, but I don't think it's like a viable thing we can go back to, mainly because of technology. And like Ted Kaczynski talks about it, technology has already deraciinated the population so much, and it's so well circulated. There's nothing you can do about it. And like your only option would be like the LARP is like a Luddite, and you would probably get thrown in prison.
Yeah. In my essay on a treatise on ethical solipsism, I made an argument that people should believe, like, the commune should not care about what suits the state, but the commune should only care about what suits itself.
What's your views like on economics at the moment?
I'm syndicalist, like Action Francais, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Action Francais, I guess you put Circle Proudhon and stuff like that, my economics have always been kind of, in that general range. For the last, I guess, 5 years or so. It's that I used to be involved with the Strasserist group, and I got kicked. Oh yeah, I got kicked out too.
It was in our union.
Yeah, and I got kicked out because I was a jokester. Apparently, they didn't like people with a sense of humor. They didn't like fun, and they kicked me out for some stupid. Huh?
That group doesn't exist anymore, by the way.
Yeah, they started inviting all these third worlders and the stuff like that. They started, like, cheering on Antifa for the collapse of society. They turned into an acceleration cult. And I was like, okay, I'm out of here. And plus, the whole entire argument of me getting kicked out of the entire formation was because I yelled at a drug dealer for calling me by a name that was given to me by a message board that made fun of me back, like, what was it? Oh, God, it was like almost 20 years ago. And this message board follows me around everywhere I go. And that's one of the reasons why I have to, like, upload with the comments. I have to, filter out some comments. And because a lot of the people on that board were liberals. And this guy who was the drug dealer was a was a social liberal too. May have been an anarchist, may have been Antifa, but I basically called him out, and I said something, that I used one of those alt right thing lines about like, hey, you probably want your wife to screw, so and so with darker colored skin. I'm not gonna say it on my channel. And and yeah. Yeah, Googles. Yeah, I said that. Yeah, and he was like, "Well, why did you say that to him?" And I'm like saying, "Well, he insulted me personally and dug up my past, so I'm gonna dig into him." And the problem is, and then the guy who is the leader of the NRU bitched me out for saying, "Oh, drug dealers are good people. They clean out society's scum." My cousin died from heroin abuse. That's not cool. And he kicked me out just simply because I complained about his shit talking of my dead cousin. Like, dude, that's family. Like, he didn't get it. And he continually called me a liar, even though he knows damn well that's the reason he kicked me out. He kicked me out because he didn't like me joking around and having a little bit of fun in the Discord. And second of all, he didn't like the fact that I called that drug dealer, I called a spade, basically. And he didn't like what I said to him. Oh, we should use alt-right talking points. We should distance ourselves from the alt-right, blah, 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 blah. You can't
really distance yourself from it, though.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. And they thought that they could. But they knew damn well that a person like me would say something like that to a drug dealer who decided to dig up my past from 15 years ago. Like, come on now. And it's like, you're going to say, oh, it's cool that my cousin died. That's bullshit. That's family. That's people that are related to me.
My major issue with NRU is like, I was in their server, like I interacted with them. I wouldn't say I was a member, I just helped them with something. My major issue is that they were being so orthodox about National Bolshevism and Strasserism, they didn't even have any racial component to them. And I didn't really have faith in them as an organization because of that. I think when you don't take into consideration of race, your movement's not really helping us in the first place. At least that's how I look at it.
Yeah. I mean, I have to coexist around blacks all the time, but, I'm usually friendly with them. I'm not going to be mean to them, but,
I interact with them, but I don't like them, but just want them straight up.
Yeah, I mean, not every single one of them is terrible that I've met, but as far as, stuff like race mixing, hell no. Stuff like miscegenation, hell no. I would never do that.
Eventually they had a program. On the program, you can read it. Their site's no longer up. They wanted worker councils running the economy. The worker council concept actually comes out of Patel's National Bolshevik Manifesto.
Yes, and I've read that book. And I understand because I have a lot.
National Bolshevism, when I was reading it, the entire manifesto is literally indistinguishable from Marxist Leninism under Stalinism. It just adds national to the name. That's there's no indistinguishable difference between the two. The only type of Nazbol that's indistinguishable from Marxist Leninism is the Russian variant with Leninov, which is more soft social democrat than economics or social democracy.
What would happen if you combined the racial the racial angle that fascists do with the workers' councils?
I'm not even sure what would happen, if you want me to be honest, because worker councils, running the economy, just for them to function, you would have to have them stay in the state, and for them to be in the state without the state encroaching on them too much, allowing them to function the way they should, it's going to have to be a republic or a democracy. And once that happens, I would argue that it's very possible the racial component can be dropped out once the state is totalitarian. And you would have to centralize it more. And then, but if you centralize it more, it would progress from worker councils to state-appointed bureaucrats, which is how you end up with the same issue as the Soviet Union.
Yeah. do you think that the entire like I think that one of the main reasons I abandoned now there's my economics is close to participatory economics in a way, but it's not in the anarchic sense. It would have to be ruled over by a hierarchical set of.
Somebody's probably gonna spurge and call me Cappy for saying this, but like in terms of like economics, so I adhere to like corporate groups within the system, like guilds, whatever you want to call them. I also believe like in monopoly nationalization, but in terms of how the economics would function, it would probably be more similar to Keynesianism, which is some school of capitalism, I guess, but it's very heavily like state-centric, state-driven.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I'm more favoritistic towards it.
So,
and like if you read like Keynes, The End of Laissez-faire, there's a whole section how guilds or unions should run the economy in collusion with the state.
So, do you think that something like participatory economics, which is something I subscribe to, with the social credit, applied into, it'd be doable?
Because you see elements of it within China and North Korea at the current moment.
So, do you know what Paricon is?
Well, like you've already described like many of the characteristics of it, as far as I'm aware.
Paricon is, I believe, has to do with it's a halfway point. I think I'd have to look at the wiki. It's a halfway point. It has organized labor elements, but it's a halfway point between syndicalism and councilism.
I mean, like, there's elements of that in Korea, though, because, like, they have, like, the credit systems, they have councils, and they have state bureaus, and they have small privatization, like, small family companies that are grouped up into, like, group cooperatives that are all, like, state-driven, for example. It has elements of councils, unions, and very small privatization.
Have you ever looked up? Have you ever looked up things about distributism? Have you ever
Distributism? Yeah, it's basically guild socialism.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to make my roommate mad tonight.
Guild socialism actually goes to feudalism because
yeah,
guilds were basically like giant cooperatives.
Basically, I mean they were basically, but they a lot of them were yeah, a lot of them were sort of like a cross the street of business and a union though back in their day.
Well, yeah, they're cartels.
Yeah. So I'm probably gonna
I have to go soon because like family wants me to go to the hospital to say bye to the person who's basically dead.
All right. Well, yeah, I was about to head off anyways myself. So it was nice having a conversation with you, Zoran Zoltan. I used to know you under a name. Can I give you a real name?
Just call me by my middle name, McCain.
That's kind of weird.
Well, I don't want to use my first or last because like I haven't docked yet. I want to keep that secretive because like
yeah.
If you hang out with me, like I'm just like I hang out with all like these like Nazgul accelerationists, acid communists, siege tier like fascist like Nassauks who want to burn the system down. But I also like have associates that are like Wignat, like Richard Spencer, or like the neo-absolutist people like Trudeau, Tom, and Furious. Like I hang out with a lot of social circles, so I don't really want to expose myself because I kind of have some like clout for kind of like getting all the information from all these different groups and kind of move stuff around so all communication with each other.
Did you just subscribe to my channel?
Yeah, I subscribe. subscribe. I didn't know you had a channel, but I also have a YouTube channel called Zoltanous HN. People can sub to if they want. You can find me on Twitter under Hegelian Rights, Zolt HN.
Okay. Anyways, everyone who's been who watches this video, this is Zoran Zoltan. We go way back. We've known each other since 2016. He asked me not to reveal his real name. I know his real name. Of course, he knows his real name. He knows my real name. But you know, you guys know me also as Justin, but that's the only information I'm giving away. But thanks for watching, and remember to hit subscribe, and you want to get bell for notifications. I'll see you later. All right.
All right.
Peace.
Yeah.